Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along. This is the first of 4 sessions that we're doing as part of the PINS project, which is the Partnership in Inclusion and Neurodiversity in Schools project. It's a national project which is fully funded, which means your school does not have to pay for this funding, which is marvellous. The person coordinating it today is Amanda from your local Parent Carer Forum, who has worked tirelessly to get these 4 sessions organised, along with my PA, Paula, without whom I just really definitely wouldn't be here today. So thank you very much to everybody. This is going to be recorded. That's the first thing that I know you're going to ask. The second thing is I have a note taker on here as well. That's an AI note taker. So if you would rather listen and not take notes, you will be getting a copy of the note, an amended copy, because Amanda and I have been having a chat beforehand, just the bits that are relevant to you. You will be getting a copy of that, and you can also have a transcript of what I said from the note taker as well, if that's what you want. It'll take us a few days to get those out to you, but they are available for you. Yes, also you can have a copy of the slides. However, I am neurodivergent, especially dyslexic, and I don't write much on them. But you're very welcome to a PDF copy if you think it would help your memory to have a look at them, or just as a memento, really. So my name is Catrina Lowri. I'm an experienced special needs coordinator and qualified teacher of SEND, and I'm the founder of Neuroteachers. I worked as an advisory teacher for Gloucestershire County Council for a number of years before setting up my business Neuroteachers, and I work with nurseries, schools, colleges and businesses in order to improve inclusion for neurodivergent people. So I come at this from the point of view of being neurodivergent. I have a diagnosis of dyslexia and bipolar, and I have traits of ADHD, dyspraxia, and auditory processing disorder. So I was that kid, you know, that pupil that you're thinking of. I was her. And then I became a teacher. So I come at this from this perspective of being a neurodivergent person, but also having been a teacher in the classroom for 23 years prior to setting up my business. So what we're going to be doing today is this is kind of an introduction to neurodiversity and how this affects behaviour and attainment in the classroom and at home, and how parents and educators can work together. So as part of the PINS project, we've been trying to work really, really hard with parent carer forums to bridge that gap between parents and teachers, because you all have amazing expertise, and the best way we're going to improve inclusion for neurodivergent pupils is if we all work together. Hooray, another person's arrived. Just letting you in. So I'll just give them a minute to get in. Hello, welcome. We're just getting started. I'm just introducing myself. My name's Catrina. This is being recorded. If you could please put your microphone on mute. Oh, another person. Lovely. Put your microphone on mute. I'm going to pause it there so the other person can get in. Hello, Miss Whittleton. That is a fantastic name. Welcome. If you could pop yourself on mute, please, when you get in. I was just introducing myself. My name's Catrina Lowri, and I'm a neurodivergent teacher. So we are going to be talking, the title for today is the snappy title, Don't Ditch Differentiation, which was the name of a blog I wrote quite a few years ago now, and it's probably been the most popular thing that I've put onto my website. I am also, well, I'm just at the point of editing my book, which will be out in probably early next year, which is called The Other 29, How Differentiating for Your Neurodivergent Pupil Can Help the Other 29 Neurotypical Children in the Class. Of course, they're not all neurotypical, because there's definitely more than one neurodivergent person in each of your class, but you know, because you've met your classes. Right, so this is what we're going to be covering today. I'm not going to read this out. This is just for those of you who like to have a list of what's going to happen, so you can like tick it off or anything. So if you want to take a screenshot, take a photograph, make a list, go ahead and do that now. Oh, hello, brilliant. Another person just joined. Fantastic. Hello, Sarah. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you for being here today. We are recording everything, so don't worry, you haven't missed much apart from me introducing myself, but I think you already know me a bit. Right, I think I've got one person with their mic on. If you wouldn't mind turning it off, please, just so we don't get any feedback. Thank you. Hello, Sarah. I can see you. Hello. Hi. Brilliant. Lovely to see you all. Right. So just to let you know, if you do ask any there is going to be a Q&A at the end. If you do ask any questions, I might answer it like facing this way because I've got my camera there, my phone there. What I do with my social media is I can't really be bothered to say stuff twice. So if somebody asks me a question that I think the general social media land might be interested in, then I answer it and then I pop it up online. Okay, so if you ever see any of my videos, it's a lot of me talking at conferences or doing online stuff. So that is why I might turn like that. Okay. But if you do have a question, query, or comment at any point, just pop it into the chat. I will try and get to them as I go along, but I definitely will answer them at the end. But the minute it pops into your head, if you feel the urge to say something, then please do in the chat, and I definitely will deal with that. So I'm going to be talking for until about 4:30, and then you've got half an hour to ask me questions. If it's not convenient for you to ask me questions tonight, you can also have a half-hour triage session for your school if you have any specific questions that apply to your setting and what's going on for you there. But we are also running 3 other sessions throughout the rest of the month as well, which you're very welcome to come along to. Okay, so let's get started. I'd like you to have a particular child in mind for the purposes of this exercise. Right, so you might have one child already who comes straight to the top of your mind when I say this. Pick them. Now, I realise that if you are a teacher, you probably teach more than one child. And if you are a member of support staff, unless you're a one-to-one LSA, you probably have more than one child in mind here. But for the purposes of what we're going to do today, I want you to pick one child. Okay? This is an exercise for you. It is purely for you. You don't need to tell me anything that you write down, but what I would like is by the end of this session today, you have an idea in your head about how you would support that child. One thing that you can take forward in your practice. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to answer 2 questions about this child. The first is, what are your hopes and aspirations for this child? The second is, how are you going to use the information I give you to help them reach those aspirations? Okay, so if you're writing it down sort of person, you can write it down. If you're the sort of person who just likes to sit and listen and think, then by all means do that, because remember, we do have a note taker. Oh, another person's joining. Lovely. Hello and welcome, new guest. We are just talking about having a particular child in mind for the purposes of this exercise. This is being recorded and there is a note taker here. So anything you miss, please may you mute your microphone. Thank you. If you do have any questions, queries or comments, please pop them in the chat at any time and I will definitely get to them at around about 3:30. Oh, we've got another person. Lovely. I said 3:30, I meant 4:30. Hello, new person. I am just at the point where we are discussing, I would like you to have a particular child in mind for the purpose of this exercise. I'd like you to consider is what your hopes and aspirations are for that child and how you're going to use this information to help them reach those aspirations. So I'm going to talk for approximately the next 45 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions at 4 o'clock. Okay, so if you do have any questions, queries, or comments, please pop them into the chat. Okay, so we're going to start with a lovely true or false exercise. So for this one, I'm going to say the statement, and then in the chat, you just need to put a T if you think it's true, and you need to put an F if you think it's false. The reason that I'm doing this is because I believe in differentiation, you see. I mean, that's the whole theme of the whole thing, isn't it? And I need to know what you already know, because if you already know something, I don't need to say it. And if you don't know something, I can go into it in more depth. So that's why we're doing this, because we do the assess, plan, do, review cycle. And this is the assess part. Because I practice what I preach. So the first question, you just put T or F in the chat. First question, 20% of people are neurodivergent. T or F? FTT. Any advance? Oh, somebody else. Hello, thank you for joining. We're just doing a true and false exercise. The first question is 20% of people are neurodivergent. True or false? You just put a T or an F into the chat and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay, the answer is true. Our best estimate on the percentage of people who are neurodivergent on this good planet of ours is 20%. That statistic comes from the ADHD Foundation, who are Europe's biggest neurodiversity charity. So just to give you an idea on a global scale, there are approximately 1.6 billion of us. Quite a lot. Next, true or false? More men than women are neurodivergent. Simply put a T or an F in the chat. Okay, any advance? We have, oh, another answer. Jolly good. F2T. Interesting. So, of those who answered, it seems like the majority think that there are more men than women who are neurodivergent. Right. It's probably actually about 50-50. There's no reason to believe that that men are more likely to be neurodivergent than women. However, women are less likely to be diagnosed because particularly, those of us who are a little older may have been missed in childhood. And up until around 2014, the diagnostic criteria were quite skewed towards males. So women often got overlooked. That doesn't mean they aren't neurodivergent. It just means that they didn't get diagnosed if they were looked at before that date. Okay, it probably is about 50-50. It's probably about a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, next. Simply put T or F into the chat. The terms autism and neurodiversity are interchangeable. T or F? Anybody want to have a guess? You got a 50-50 chance at the end of the day, haven't you? Right, so we've got 2 T's so far. Anybody else? Anyone have a guess? 50-50. One more answer. Ah, we have another 2 and we have a false. It is in fact false. Autism and neurodiversity are not interchangeable. Autism is a specific neurodivergent condition, and neurodiversity refers to all people who have a brain and mind. Everybody is neurodiverse. Some of us are lucky enough to be neurodivergent, however. Okay, neurodiversity refers to everybody. Right. So next question. The term neurodiversity grew up on the internet, on internet forums in the 1990s. True or false? Where did the word come from? Is that true or false? Autism is T. Autism is true. Okay. Sorry, I don't know what you meant. You want to write a question, that's absolutely fine. Just true. Okay, thank you. Thank you. No worries. It's easily done. Oh, these mistakes I've made in the chat on training courses. It's okay. Right, so it is in fact true. Neurodiversity is a term that grew up on internet forums in the 1990s. So way, way back before we even had like Facebook, I mean, that long ago, there used to be these things called internet forums. So, and there was also email lists. And in those, they were often about a particular special interest or hobby. So there might be a band you follow, there might be a football team you followed. It could be about the history of the Titanic or the Tudors. Or it could be about, you know, geology, something like that. Okay. And in those forums, especially around special interests, people started to realize that they were socializing in a new way. And a lot of these people who were socializing in a new way and becoming friends without actually physically meeting turned out to either be autistic or ADHD. And they started to talk about their neurology, and they started to talk about the diversity in their neurology, and eventually the term neurodiversity grew up because they didn't much care for the medicalized model, and both autism and ADHD are massively, massively pathologized and medicalized. So that's how it first grew up. Now, here is the final question, and this is the one that usually causes people a lot of conversation. So if you are in a room with someone else, then feel free to discuss it with them. Neurodiversity is a social construct. True or false? Put your answer in the chat. T or F? T or F? true. Anybody else? So the answer is in fact true. It is in fact a social construct. That means that it is not a diagnosis. It's an idea. Yes, it is true. Okay. So I often do these at the beginning of any kind of presentation that I do, particularly about neurodivergence, because it shows me which bit you already knew and which bits I've already spoken about. And that means that I can skip some of the slides because you've done very well on this. Neurodiversity is a social construct. You can't have a diagnosis of neurodiversity. I have no idea why they end up calling it in some places the neurodiversity pathway, because we're all neurodiverse. It should be called the neurodivergent pathway, shouldn't it? But anyway, nobody owns a word. So what actually, in fact, is neurodivergence? So your pupil, the one that you've got in mind, may well be neurodivergent. That means that broadly speaking, they're going to fit into one of these three categories. So neurodivergent people are those of us whose minds and brains have not developed along typical lines. And we fit into three broad categories. Firstly, hereditary conditions which cause a neurological difference. That's things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc. The next, all hereditary mental health conditions. That's things such as bipolar, schizophrenia, other hereditary mental health conditions that are lifelong. And then also all acquired neurodivergent conditions. Sorry, all acquired neurological differences such as those caused by a brain injury or an accident. So, for example, if a child has a stroke, encephalitis, an infection of some kind in the brain, or has some kind of accident, which means that they were previously neurotypical, but their accidental illness caused a difference in the brain and mind, which is permanent, and you may see differences in their personality and cognition as a result. That's called acquired neurodivergence. And the reason I always include it is because as far as we're concerned in schools, the way you support it would be exactly the same as you do in the other categories. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the common neurodivergent conditions. This diagram says neurodiversity on it because it also includes neurotypical, which is in this circle up here. Okay, so neurodiversity, just to remind you, is everybody in the human genome. And those are some examples of some neurodiverse conditions that you may see there on that circle. I'm now going to go over the most common types and talk about how they co-occur. So autism, it has a prevalence of approximately 1 in 28, although the UK government record it as 1 in 38. But the best pieces of research that I've seen, which are peer-reviewed and extremely rigorous, put the occurrence as approximately 1 in 28. So you would probably get one in each classroom of a typical school with a class of 30. Okay. The next is ADHD. ADHD affects around 1 in 20 people. Dyspraxia, otherwise known as developmental coordination disorder, affects around 1 in 20 people. Dyslexia affects around 1 in 8 people. Dyscalculia affects around 1 in 20 people. And developmental language delay, which is the most common type of neurodivergent condition, affects around 1 in 6 people, but is only usually diagnosed in about 1 in 15. So it's thought to be massively underdiagnosed. And this is the most common neurodivergent condition. And if you want to know more about what it is, ask me questions at the end. I'm quite happy to explain it if you've never heard of it or you don't know anything about it. Okay, so the wonderful thing about that child that you had in mind from the beginning, the wonderful thing about them is it's highly, highly unlikely that they are just dyslexic or just autistic. There is a 50 to a 70% chance that they have more than one neurodivergent condition. I've got 5. That is not that unusual. Okay, so 2 or more is not unusual at all. In fact, there's approximately a 50 to a 70% chance of a co-occurring condition, and depending on the combination of conditions. So For example, autism has about a 50% co-occurrence with ADHD. ADHD has approximately a 50%, a 70% co-occurrence with dyslexia. Okay. So you can have, they are do commonly co-occur. The only ones that you can't have at the moment under the diagnostic criteria co-occurring are autism and developmental language disorder, or developmental language delay, because in order to get a diagnosis of developmental language delay, you have to have no other communication disorder or condition. So it can't co-occur with Downs, global delay, autism, or anything else that causes a speech and language communication difference. Okay, so highly likely that your neurodivergent child has more than one neurodivergent condition. There's at least a 50% chance. Which brings me to my next point, fruit salad. So when I was in school, I got called complex, both to my face and behind my back. Didn't much like it. People would say to me, "Oh, Catrina, you're so complex." And they didn't mean it as a compliment. They really didn't mean it as a compliment. What they meant was, we don't know what's going on for you, Catrina. Right? And it made me feel very much like it was my fault, when it wasn't. I was just born this way and it was an accident of genealogy. Equally, it's not my daughter's fault she's neurotypical. I don't know how she ended up neurotypical, what with having a mum with so many different neurodivergent conditions and her whole family being really quite the fruit salad, and yet somehow she ended up neurotypical. But that's genetics for you. And they didn't even give me a leaflet, and they've never sent me on a course to teach me how to parent her. Funny that. Anyway, fruit salad. So I came across this and I much prefer it than being complex. And it's the idea that we are all a little bit of a fruit salad when it comes to our neurodivergent need. So this idea comes from Donna Williams, who is an autistic advocate, and she described her various neurodivergent conditions as being like a fruit salad. So if you're having a child who's in crisis, it can look like a smoothie. So it looks like it's just whizzing around all over the place and you can't tell one fruit from the other. It's just a big kind of like whizzing around kind of excitement thing that's going on when there's a crisis going on. But it isn't a fruit salad. The ingredients within that child's neurodivergent need are separate yet intrinsic, like the fruits in a fruit salad. And the way it works when it comes to particularly behavior or attainment, often if a child isn't quite achieving how they should, or if they're struggling with behavior in any kind of way and causing behaviors of concern, the reason for this is because of unmet need. And that means that you don't know all the ingredients that are going on in their fruit salad. Okay, and that is okay. That is really okay. I'm going to tell you how to deal with that. So I'm just going to give explain unmet need in terms of the fruit salad in terms of my own need. Right, I'm going to just talk about 2 of my neurodivergent conditions, because if we did all 5, we'd be here all day. So it goes like this. The bowl is the fruit salad, and the individual fruits that are inside it are my neurodivergent needs. So we're just going to concentrate on 2. The first one is, if you wanted to support me at work, and I'm dyslexic, right? If you wanted to support me at work, then you might give me some accessibility tools on my laptop to help me with my reading and spelling and to help me with my grammar and organization. So that means my dyslexia would be supported. Accessibility tools. The other thing is, I'm bipolar and I might struggle with my mental health from time to time. So you might arrange for me to have a few sessions of counseling with like a school insurance policy. A lot of schools have these things through their HR department, or multi-academy trusts have them. Some schools have them as well, where you can have a few sessions with a counsellor as part of a health benefit from working at the school. Local authorities have them too. So if you did that, then I would then be supported in terms of my mental health. Okay, with me so far? Cool. Right. The accessibility tools are not going to help me with the mental health. Yeah. And the counseling is not going to help me with my spelling. You need to do both. Otherwise, I would have unmet need. Okay, makes sense? Right. So the thing is, though, there's 5. There's not just There's not just 2, there's 5. And for most of my life, we didn't know about that. Right. I didn't get the recognized traits of ADHD until last year when I was 48 and I'm 49. So, and also I do this for a living. I am a neurodiversity specialist. It still took me that long to get a diagnosis. So what I'm saying is there's probably a really long waiting list for diagnosis, and parents and teachers, and I can completely understand this, get very kind of hung up on the idea of getting a diagnosis. And diagnosis is important. It has its points because it means, particularly for the child, they have a way of describing why they are what they are, the way in which they are, right? Which is a description of their identity. But all of the legislation says we meet the need, right? That's in the SEND Act, that's in the Equalities Act, that's in the teaching standards. We meet the need, and it's regardless of diagnosis. That's not actually that important for us as teachers, but we can get really hung up on it. But honestly, you do not need another expert to come along and tell you what's going on for the child that you see on a daily basis or several times a week, because you know, right? Because you're extremely professional. On this call, we've probably got decades of experience between us. Okay, you know. And if you don't know, then the other person who will probably know what's going on for this child is the parent or carer. And between you, you can certainly do an awful lot to find out what that child needs to support. You're probably already doing it, but what I'm trying to do is free you up to understand that actually you are a professional, and teachers get undermined time after time after time in the media and on social media and get blamed and told to do more different things. And it's just overwhelming. At the end of the day, you're a professional person and you know what this child needs. So do that. Okay. So in order to identify what to do about this child, what's going on in their fruit salad, you do not need to know the name of the fruit. You just need to know there's a flavor. And you already know that. That's why you picked them. So you're going to do 2 things. You're going to write a list of strengths, and you're going to give them more of what they are good at. Celebrate their strengths. And then you're going to write a list of needs, and you're going to do everything you can to support those needs. And if you can't do it yourself, you're going to get help. And sometimes you might need help from outside agencies. But really, there's an awful lot that you can do. Even, I mean, it's bad in education at the moment. It really is. I go to a lot of schools, but there's so much that you can do. Okay. And also the other thing is, it is okay if you haven't noticed what's going on for this child. You just know they're struggling, or the parents are saying they're going home and just exploding everywhere, or having to sit under the stairs and rock for several hours, or lock themselves in their room and hide under their blanket. Okay. That is okay if you, at the moment, aren't necessarily sure what's going on. That is okay, right? Because very often children, and particularly those who go to mainstream, are excellent at masking. So masking is where you hide your true self. Okay. And most people who are neurodivergent, if I'm completely honest with you, are ashamed that people will see their neurodivergence. It's easy for me because I'm professionally neurodivergent. People literally hire me on the basis that I am neurodivergent. But there was a lot of years where I tried to blend in with the wallpaper. I don't now, obviously. I mean, look at my hair. But, you know, I really did try very hard to do that. And most neurodivergent children will be masking in schools. Okay. So that is something that is very important to deal with. And if you want to know more, ask me questions. Right. So the next thing is to consider the age or stage of your child in mind. Particularly when it comes to primary schools, there are certain pinch points where you might notice changes in behavior or ups and downs in attainment, and those are usually around a change of key stage. So for example, when children go from preschool to reception, very often, you know, they've been in nursery till 6 o'clock every night and they've been fine, and then suddenly they go into reception and, you know, it gets a bit real for them, to be honest, and they end up falling asleep in the book corner at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and having a nap in the middle of the day, or having to go home and sleep straight after school, because reception is actually so much harder than preschool as far as the child is concerned, because remember, they've never been to school. And the other pinch point is then when they move from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 3, because I don't really know what's going on with the Year 3 curriculum, but it's ridiculously crowded. And things just get a lot more formal around then. And then finally, then, of course, there's Year 6, where, children are starting to go through puberty, so we give them SATs. So those are times when you might notice more traits of neurodivergence come to the fore. But they were already, if they're neurodivergent, this will be permanent and they were already there. It's just that because of the change in circumstances, the child is not as able to mask as they used to. So if you're suddenly seeing things that you weren't, it's because previously they were masking. They were almost certainly always there. These are lifelong. And the next thing is intersectionality and neurodivergence. So there will be people who come from different cultures, religions, and classes who may have varying degrees of understanding about neurodivergence. The most important thing is to not make assumptions. Somebody may be from, a sub-Saharan African background and be very religious and absolutely welcome this child into my household. They are the child God gave me, and I'm super proud, and they're a huge part of their community and culture. And you can have another child who's from quite a middle-class family who think it's really shameful to have a neurodivergent child and is absolutely in denial about it. So you're going to have to meet people where they are. And if you do suspect that a child is neurodivergent and you're working with a parent, particularly one who you've not met before, tread lightly, and it's a drip drip effect. I mean, questions that you can ask if you're not sure are things like, what have you heard about autism? Tell me what you already know about dyslexia. And then you're testing the water in a really, really non-confrontational, non-judgmental way. Right, we'll skip that one. Okay, so we'll come to that one at the end, actually, I think. Okay, so next, when you write your list of strengths and needs, when you write your list particularly of needs, you're going to need to divide it into these 4 sections. So what I would do if I were you, and this is my choice, it's entirely up to you, you can do what you want. I just take an A4 piece of paper and fold it into 4, really, because there's 4 areas of needs. So we're going to go into these in a bit more detail in a minute, but what I've done is I've condensed down all the different neurodivergent conditions that you might see in the classroom. And I've looked at all the areas of need that you might see in the classroom. And I've condensed them down to these 4. If you want to go into it scientifically, if you want to look onto the DSM or the ICD or anything to do with diagnosis, it's going to be more than just 4 areas. Okay, but what you need to know as a practitioner is what is going on for the child in these 4 areas. The first is processing. The second is sensory need. Third, executive function. And then finally, social communication and interaction. So let's go into these in a bit more detail. The first thing that you need to know about this child is how do they process information? Mostly the thing that you will notice in school is the speed. Now, this is the thing that has made the biggest difference to my own classroom practice when I learned this fact. The average neurotypical person takes 6 seconds to process an instruction. This is 6 seconds. That feels like quite a long time, but if you're not leaving at least 6 seconds between your instructions, your neurotypical child is not understanding you. So if you want to make the biggest difference, I'd do that, leave 6 seconds. Now, there's going to be some children who process things more slowly. For example, some autistic and dyslexic people will need 15 to 30 seconds between instructions. So what you do in the classroom is you go and you give the instruction to them. Then you walk to the middle of the room and you speak to everybody, by which time they will have picked up on what you've said. And then you can start back on them. The other thing you can do, of course, is write it down or use some kind of visual in order to help you. Your ADHD learner, on the other hand, has gone much more quickly than you can. They've already gone to, they already think they know what you want before you even get to the end of your sentence. And sometimes they've only heard the most interesting or exciting things that you've said. So for example, Sophie, we're going to do a project on India next term. Okay, all she's heard is India, and she's off thinking about elephants and tigers and mountains and seas and technology and people and the weather and the spices and the food and the silk. Okay, so she's heard India and got very excited about that and hasn't heard the next term part, which is why she didn't get what you were saying, which is why she's now drawing a picture of an elephant, even though you're doing about the Victorians. Okay, so change the way you say something. So for Sophie, what you would say is, Sophie, when I say the word India, what comes to mind? Okay, then she gets the chance to info dump. You can then collect the ideas up on the board or a whiteboard or a flip chart for later. And then you can say, okay, that's next term. Now we're going to finish off our project on Victorians. Next, sensory difference. This is always known as being an issue for autistic and ADHD people, but trust me, all neurodivergent people have a difference in their sensory system. There are, as you can see from the diagram, 8 senses. So besides the ones that you already know about with the organs attached to them, those 5 senses that you know about, there are also 3 internal senses. The first being proprioception, which is our external sense of body awareness. That tells you where you are in space in relation to people and objects. The next is balance, which you are definitely going to notice if a child continuously, like me, has to move throughout the entire day. It's because if we sit still, we feel dizzy. So if you've got a child who's moving and swinging and climbing and everything all day long, they feel dizzy and they need to move. So designing some meaningful movement into their day will help them to be able to sit still. Sounds counterintuitive, but trust me, it works. And then finally, there's interoception. I'm saying it like that because that's how you spell it. Interoception is a whole bunch of senses, which are all to do with your internal organs and how you process your internal sense of body awareness. So that's things like whether you need to go to the toilet, eat or drink, sleep, whether you're too hot or too cold, whether you feel pain, whether you feel unwell, or any kind of discomfort. Okay, and a neurodivergent person will have either a hypo or hyper awareness arousal in at least one of those senses, sometimes several, and sometimes they would be hypo and hyper aroused in the same sense. So what I mean by that, hyper aroused is here at the top. This is where you're getting too much stimulation and you are overactive. And this is where you are getting not enough stimulation and you are underactive. Okay. Ideally, we all want to be in the optimum level here throughout the day in order for us to be calm and alert and be able to attend to things that are not of our choosing. So if you have a child who has sensory differences, which is all of the neurodivergent children in your class, who on average would be about 5 or 6 children in the average class of 30, then the first thing you need to do is regulate before you get any concentrated work out of them. Always regulate before educate. And the next area of need is executive function. So executive function are the skills we need to do activities. And they are organizational skills, impulse control, task initiation, emotional control, flexible thinking, planning and prioritizing, self-motivation, and the greatest of these, and the most important of them all, is working memory. Okay, so working memory unlocks everything else. If you're having a child who is struggling with any of those things, and mostly in the classroom, the thing that you will notice, I promise you, is task initiation, followed swiftly by planning and prioritizing. Okay, if a child is struggling with those 2 things, what you need to do is unlock their working memory. If you unlock their working memory, it's a bit like a computer game. Ding, ding, ding. All the others unlock too. And the way you work on working memory within your classroom is you have very good routines and predictability, because routines and predictability free up mental load. A neurotypical child has about 6 spaces in their working memory. They can hold up to 6 things in their mind at a time. For a neurotypical child, a neurodivergent child, it's about half that. So you are talking a maximum of 3 things. Okay, so if you can free that up, right, you need a pen, pencil, ruler. What do you need? Pen, pencil, ruler. I'm going to show you pen, pencil, ruler. This is the pen, pencil, ruler that you need. Okay, what do you need? Pen, pencil, ruler. Okay, go and get those things. Right, open your book, date and title. Open your book, date and title. Okay, we can do that. So you see, it's about how you give your instructions. And what I always say is it's how you lay the table, how you make it really obvious that these are the things that they need. And for that particular activity, every single time we need pen, pencil, ruler. Okay, so next, social communication and interaction. This is known as being a difficulty with all autistic and ADHD people. However, all neurodivergent people struggle with communication and interaction. The reasons being that if you have processing differences and you have sensory differences and you have difference to your executive function, then you will have difference with your social communication and interaction because your experience of the social world is different. So there are 3 areas of social communication: joint attention, language, and perspective. You start with joint attention first. So the way you gain joint attention from the child is you say, Ben, because that's his name. And then you need to give them an irresistible reason to attend, because what you're going to ask them to do is hard and they probably can't do it. This is what's going on in their head. It's hard and I probably can't do it. And I'm going to feel rubbish about it. And what I'm doing right now is giving me dopamine and giving me pleasure and giving me serotonin and giving me the endorphins that I need. And what you're asking me to do is hard, right? So why should I? And that's not in a nasty way, but why should I go away from the thing that is giving me what I need to the thing that you're going to ask me to do, which is going to be hard, right? So you need an irresistible reason. And saying because I say so or because it's on the curriculum is not going to be enough, really. You have to give them an irresistible reason to attend. So you're going to say, Ben, we're going to learn about volcanoes. Come here and sit down. I need you to sit in this chair here so that you can see the screen. I'm going to show you a video of a volcano erupting. And I need you to predict which way the lava is going to fall. Are you ready? Very important job, Ben. So he's going to do it then, because you've given him an irresistible reason to attend. Not everything is as interesting as volcanoes, for example, fronted adverbials, but you'll find a way. Okay, so next, differentiation. Now everyone gets their knickers in a knot about this, if I'm honest with you. And I have been working in education for coming up to 28 years now, and I have got sick of the amount of times they have changed the name of this thing, which is basically the same. Okay, so we've had scaffolding up, adaptive teaching, quality first teaching, universal provision, differentiation, and now in Wales, at least, we're on ordinary available provision. I don't know what they call it where you are. A lot of people are still on adaptive teaching. But anyway, it's basically the same. Okay, it's the same, right? There's no difference. They're all the same thing. And the idea originally came from Germany, from a man called Herbert, who was an educationalist back in the 1800s. And he had this idea he called it pedagogical tact. And it went like this. You have the pedagogy, which is the science and art of teaching. You see the child in front of you, and you apply the methods to the child. And that's what teaching is, really, isn't it? That's what teaching and supporting children is. And the good news is there are actually only 9 things you can do. And these are the 9 things. And you don't need to screenshot it, because in a minute, I'm going to give you a QR code that can go straight to my website, and you can get a beautiful poster that you can print out in A4 and keep forever. It's yours. It's a gift. It's much better than this page here. And I'm going to give it to you in a minute. So these are the 9 types of differentiation. Adjusting the rate. This is basically about the processing that I said earlier. Adjusting the volume. Right, I want you to write one really good paragraph describing how the volcano erupted, Ben. And I want you to concentrate on the use of adjectives. Adjust the complexity. Right, some children are going to talk about all the different kinds of igneous rock. Other children are just going to explain what igneous rock is. Staging the task, that is laying everything out or showing them, putting it in front of them in a desk, pen, pencil, ruler. Staging the task, setting it all up for them. Prioritizing. If you're doing in maths, you've got 10 questions. You're going to get one of them to do 3, 6, and 9. You're going to get another one to do 2 and 7. You're going to get another one to do, depending on like it's positive and negative numbers. Some of you are going to be doing multiplying. Some of you are just going to be doing adding. Some of them are just going to be doing taking away, depending on what they need. But then you're going to feed back all together and everybody's going to have found out what the answers to all 10 of the questions are. The next is change the format of presentation. So the way in which you present information, we are lucky enough, most of us, to have interactive classrooms now with smart boards, and there's all kinds of different ways you can present information to children these days. Then it's changing the production method. So the child may make a poster one day, write bullet points another, concentrate on a single paragraph another, type it one time, dictate it another time, but change the format of presentation depending on the needs of the child on the given day. And then next, change the evaluation system. We constantly just evaluate children on their ability to do something or not. It's always about academics, when sometimes we should be actually evaluating their creativity, their effort, and their independence. And independence is ever so important and massively underestimated in our education system the way it is. And then finally, it's about using support aids. I am not expecting you to go out and buy all kinds of sensory equipment for your classroom or your school. Use what you have around you. You don't necessarily even need sensory equipment. You can just give them a heavy box of books to take back to the library. But sometimes it's as simple as things like, it's too hot, open the window. It's too bright, turn the lights off. Yeah, sometimes it's where you seat the child in the classroom. Sometimes it's giving them alternative seating. I like seating that has arms on it, for example. If you had the option and there were seats with arms on, that might make your ADHD children fidget a little less. It's worth a try, especially if you've already got them. Don't go buying them specially, but if you've got them, then try it. Seating makes quite a big difference, actually. I'm sure that's why private schools do better. Right, here's your QR code. By all means, just snap that now, fill in the little form, and you can have your free resource, which will wing its way into your inbox. Okie dokie. Right, so the next thing is about your neurodivergent child. They are going to feel like they don't fit in. And the thing about fitting in is it's the opposite of belonging. Fitting in is where you will only be accepted if you are the way you're expected to be. Belonging is knowing that you will be accepted for being your authentic self, no matter how you show up. And what we need to do for all of our children is to create a sense of belonging. And we do that by recognizing their strengths and needs. Okay, so just to recap, your particular child in mind, you're going to write 4 lists about their strengths and their needs in these 4 areas, which are processing, sensory need, executive function, and social communication. Next, our strategies for my mythical child here, who's called Stacey Stockphoto, it's a well-known Swedish name, are that I'm going to adjust the rate, because that's the easiest thing for me to do, is to change the way I give instructions to Stacey. I'm going to stage the task. I don't need anything extra for this. I am just simply going to go, when it's page 58 in the textbook, I'm going to open it to page 58 and I'm going to point to it for her and show her it's page 58 is exercise 3. You're probably already doing this stuff. It's just about you doing them mindfully. It literally is not rocket science. Everything about differentiation is simple. It's not necessarily easy. And then we're going to prioritize. So like I said, we are just going to ask her to do one really good paragraph. We're not going to worry about spellings at this point. We really want to encourage her to use her adjectives and adverbs. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a support aid, because we know Stacey runs a little warm. And I've got a small fan in my classroom, so I'm going to put it next to Stacey so she doesn't get too hot and it's easier for her to concentrate. That's it. Like I said, simple, not necessarily easy. It does require some thought, but hopefully you've got a few ideas for your particular child in mind. So what I want you to do when you go away from this, later on when you're reflecting, is think about which strategies you will choose from the lovely QR code that I've just given you. And you need to consider processing, sensory need, executive function, and social communication need. That's my ebook. Right, and now remember, we cannot educate without regulating. That's why this triangle has such a big regulate written at the bottom of it, because this is the most important part. Especially if you're struggling with behavior with your child, always go back to regulated. An dysregulated child cannot learn. So if in doubt, go back to regulation. And next, you get much better results if you work with the child. Okay. This is the social model of discipline. I've done lots of videos on all of this stuff, by the way, in case you want to go back over it. Just check out my social media. We do much better if we work with the children and their families. No one likes having stuff done to them. If we ignore things, then we are being neglectful. It won't be willful, of course, and also if we do things for children, then we can end up with permissiveness or learned helplessness, and that's not helpful either. So finally, we are celebrating and embracing difference. So this is a picture of a Japanese art called kintsugi, which is where we use a gold paint to mend broken crockery. And I think you'll agree that here, making a feature of the faults is something rather beautiful. So I'm just going to leave you with one final thought about neurodivergence. I found this really amazing TikToker, but I can't find him again. He is a carpenter. In fact, if you know him, then please do let me know. He's a carpenter and he's got ADHD. And one of the quotes from him was, "Who do you think it was who discovered fire? Wasn't no neurotypical child banging two sticks together. It was your ADHD kid." So we shall leave it there. Thank you ever so much. We've got time for some questions. You can also sign up to my newsletter using this QR code, or if you'd like to follow me on any social media, I am at Neuroteachers on everything apart from Twitter because it's disgusting. And if you do follow me on Instagram, it's at Neuroteachers UK. So thank you very much. I need to do that. Right. So thank you. That was great. Oh, I'm glad you found it useful. Thank you very much. So you have options now to ask me any questions that you would like to. We've got approximately half an hour. What I will probably do now is stop the recording because we are at the end. And that means that all questions that are going to be answered will be confidential. So thank you very much. I am going to stop the recording now. Stop recording.